welcome into Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Of course, I'm not Michael Spencer. Our Michael is out for a little while. He's got a new addition to his family. We wish him a congrats. I'm Romi Bean, and of course, the star of the show, former Broncos linebacker, Super Bowl 50 champion, Brandon Marshall. Brandon, you might have to anchor the show here a little bit, as I'm feeling it out. How you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling all right. I'm feeling good. I'm a little under the weather. My baby's sick, so she's, spreading around the house. But other than that, I'm feeling good.
Yeah, you and Michael now are going to have to exchange tips and tricks here.
Yeah, 100%.
I love it.
I told him, welcome to the club.
Welcome to the club. I love it. You know what? There's a lot to talk about, B. Marshall. Let's just jump right into it. It's time to find out what's on Marshall's mind. What's on Marshall's mind brought to you by Breckenridge Distillery, official bourbon of the Denver Broncos. Shop Colorado retailers for their limited edition Broncos bourbon blends. So, B. Marsh, what's on Marshall's mind today?
Yeah, man. Look, I just want to give a shout out to that defense, man. We're going to start on a positive note. With all the negativity surrounding the Broncos season, this Monday I decided I want to start on a positive note. Broncos defense, they shut down Derrick Henry, the best back in the game, or one of the best backs in the game. Held him to about 53 yards rushing, held the whole team to 63 yards. Now, that's fantastic. That's winning football. It's winning defense. They just didn't get it done.
I love the positivity. I hate to be the negative Nancy here in the group, but I got to bring it up. Like you said, they held him to 53 yards. 9 times out of 10, you're going to win if you can do that with Derrick Henry. But yet again, the Broncos offense gets 10 points. I mean, this defense has held teams to under 20 points 8 times this season. As a guy who, through your career, you've been on some defenses that had to carry the weight. Realistically, how frustrated are you feeling right now?
Extremely frustrating because, look, the defense is holding their end of the bargain. And I said this on the show before, when we have goal boards in the beginning of the season, they put up the goal boards, maybe, 2 or 3 turnovers a game, hold a team under 17 points. 17 points or less is the gold standard. And in the NFL, that's, if you hold a team to 17 points or less, you have a fantastic defense. You'll have one of the best defenses in the league as far as scoring defense goes. The Broncos have been doing that, right? They've been doing that week in and week out all year, right? If our offense just had a little bit of a pulse, potentially would be, in the playoff race right now. But, look, it's hard to hold an NFL team to 17 points or less, but the Broncos have been doing it. And so shout out to them and shout out to their D coordinator because, look, this is the championship defense. It's just sad that we're wasting it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. They're playing like a championship defense. To hear it from you, a guy who played on a championship defense, I think that carries a lot of weight. Let's shift a little bit more back to a positive again with that. Bradley Chubb gets traded. Justin Simmons is out. Baron Browning's out. Yet they still come out and they absolutely dominate that game. How was Ejiro Evero able to do that with, a lot of reserves without a bunch of stars?
That's just shout out to the coaching staff. That just lets you know what type of coaching staff they have, what, the attention to detail that they show and the scheme, the system, how they practice, that's what it is. When you have some of your stars out and the team is still getting it done, it lets you know that the practice habits are good, the scheme is really good, the coaches are good, the technique is good, the technique work. Everything is solid, right? So that lets you know that it's not just, okay, we're good because we have these top players. Now, they definitely help, but at the same time, throwing backups in and still holding Derrick Henry to 53 yards and still holding the Tennessee Titans to 17 points, that lets you know, man, it's a scheme thing. It's a whole defensive thing. It's a coaching staff thing. So shout out to the staff.
I don't like to create, we don't like to create any controversy, but Draymond Jones, really interesting postgame yesterday. He was almost sounded apathetic, right? Like you could tell that a guy was he was frustrated, He's like, hey, well, at least we're not 0-9, I guess, right? Realistically, when you got the number 1 scoring defense in the league and you got the worst scoring offense in the league, now you're 9 games in, how does this locker room not have a divide? How do you stay together?
It's tough. It's tough. And I will say this, if Nathaniel Hackett doesn't fix it soon, he will lose that locker room. Look, Evero has a locker room, right? They love the defensive coach. I'm pretty sure they're playing great and sound defense, but Hackett will lose the locker room if he doesn't fix it soon, or something has to change. Something has to give. It almost reminds me of the Raiders from yesterday. Derek Carr crying in the press conference. Josh Jacobs, puts on the Instagram, damn man, or whatever. Then Max Crosby says something on Twitter. Look, Josh McDaniels is going to lose the locker room too, just like Nathaniel Hackett. So something has to give.
Look, the Raiders could have just called the Broncos, and they could have let them know, don't hire Josh McDaniels. We definitely have to talk more about that coming up a little later when we zoom around the league. But you mentioned Nathaniel Hackett, Brandon, and I got to ask, because of course the fans are calling for his head right now. They want him out. But realistically, it's not college. If you fire a guy, you can't get a jump on recruiting. Is there any benefit to firing a guy midseason, or do you just ride it out in the pros?
I guess you gotta look at the potential ceiling of the team. Is a team on a good trajectory with Nathaniel? Now they surrounded, or they gave Nathaniel a lot of good weapons, except the O-line. Right, the O-line is definitely kind of shaky, which is why Russell was sacked 6 times yesterday. Which is why some of the woes have been there. They haven't been able to run the ball. They ran the ball terribly yesterday. I think they averaged like 2.9 yards a carry as a team. 2.6, whatever it was. It was terrible. You have to run to win, right? That's what my college coach would say: run to win. And he meant that, literally and figuratively. But they gave Hackett a lot of the tools. They gave him a quarterback, and Russell just looks like a shell of himself. I think it's the play calling, because Russell works best when he's on boots, or he's scrambling, or the pocket's moved. And there's a reason that Geno Smith is playing well. Right, Geno's playing really well. He came from the Russell Wilson system. So, look, the only benefit I see is if we switch play callers, right? We switch offensive coordinators, and he tries to tailor the offense more to Russell Wilson. That's the only benefit I see.
You make a great point. And at the end of the day, they paid Russ $250 million. You got to build around him. You can't build around Hackett. But you mentioned Russ getting sacked 6 times. He got hit like 18 times. Here's my question. Obviously, a lot of that's on the O-line. Where's the split? Is it all on the O-line? Is Russ holding the ball too long? Is he uncomfortable? How do you break that down?
Yeah, I think it could be a little bit of both. I definitely think he could be skittish in there because, first of all, the Titans have a great pass rush. You saw what they did to the Chiefs last week. They ended up losing the game, but they came to Mahomes. Now, some of that could be Russ not getting the ball out, not reading the defense correctly, or stepping up in the pocket instead of maybe escaping outward, right? So it could be both. They tried their best yesterday, and it sucks to say I have to use that phrase. They tried their best, which means they're less than adequate, and it seems like they are, to be honest with you. But I think it could be on both parties.
And then of course there's a lot of injuries. We're going to get into that because we need like a whole segment just to talk about the injuries. We got a lot coming up on this next segment with the one and only Brandon Marshall, Super Bowl 50 champion, right now on Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael Bean subbing in for Michael. We got much more coming up, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Up next, we're going to talk about those injuries. We're going to give out some grades as well. We'll be right back.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store.
Welcome back into Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. I'm Romi Bean, subbing in for Michael Spencer as he's out with his new baby. And of course, the best in the business, Brandon Marshall, Super Bowl 50 champion. No one better to give out some grades on yesterday's game. That brings us to today's report card, brought to you by the Colorado Lottery. Play CBS4, pick the score for your chance to win $1,000 in scratch tickets. Enter at cbscolorado.com/contests. So, B. Marsh, time to give out some grades. Who you got? Who's on your report card today?
Well, I'm going to double down on what I said in the beginning of the show. I'm going to give a grade to the Broncos' run defense, man. They get an A for me. I want to say Derrick Henry is leading the league in rush yards. So to hold him to 53 yards, when he's their bell cow back, when he really is the offense, shout out to them.
I mean, I couldn't agree more, especially the run defense has been the one part of the defense where people kind of knock a little bit and they say, you know, they gave a bunch up to Travis Etienne the week before. Then you stop Derrick Henry. I mean, tell me what's the mentality of kind of the defensive front and the linebacking core and the guys who stop the run game? I feel like you guys, right, you got to dig down. What's the mentality of those guys?
Yeah, I mean, look, you got to dig deep. You know, it's one of those situations where you come into a week like this and all the emphasis is on the run game, right? So that's all it's on. So, you know, the coaches is pounding like, we got to stop the run. We have to stop the run because that's really what the Tennessee Titans live on, right? Now, the Jaguars, you know, they kind of have a mixed offense. They want to go through Trevor Lawrence. They want to go through Travis. Now, Travis kind of snuck up on us, right, and played well. And some people actually have run, you know, pretty decently on the Broncos defense, but you know, they decided to, you know, to hone in on the run on this one because that's all they really have. The Titans really aren't anything without their run game. So, you know, it's easy when you can hone in on one thing, you know, which they did. Everybody played their technique. They were gap sound. They were their technique sound. They tackled well. So, I mean, look, you know, and that was the end result. It was a great showing by the Broncos run defense.
When you think, I mean, in football, any sport in general, there's so much pride that goes into your craft. But when I think about defending the run, I mean, is there any area, you know, in making big tackles like that as a linebacker, as a D lineman, is there any more position or job that you have to take more pride in? Because that is a gritty job.
No, I mean, and honestly, you know, every coach will tell you, whether it's offensive or defensive alike, they will tell you that we have to run the football to win the game, right? They want to try to control the clock, so they want to run the football. Now, if you stop the run, right, you'll make the team more one-dimensional. You can get into your third down, you know, pass defensive sets. You get your nickel, your dime. You know, you get to run more exotic coverages, try to, you know, try some things, scheme for the offense. But you have to stop the run. You know, that's the basic. That's the end all be all. If you stop the run, that you have a chance to win the game. And if you can run the football, you have a chance to control the clock and win the game, which the Broncos didn't do yesterday. We weren't able to run the football, which, you know, made Russ throw it 42 times. And, you know, as, you know, highly touted as Russ is, it's still not ideal for him to throw it 42 times, you know, at the end of the day.
Well, you give it an A to the run D. I feel like it's a weighted A again. It's because it's coming from you. It's coming from a guy who's done that. I love it. I got a grade out to give too. I'm going to give Jalen Virgil. He gets an A from me. First NFL game, first target is a catch, a 66-yard touchdown. I mean, that's unbelievable. This guy's undrafted. This was a guy who was kind of a darling of camp. You know how we fall in love with guys during camp, but then he doesn't get his chance. And to come out and have a play like that and make such an impact, I mean, what a cool moment as a player. If you were on the team, what's it like to see a guy undrafted, first catch of his NFL career, get a touchdown?
No, it's dope. It's dope, you know, to see that and to see, you know, his perseverance, his hard work finally, you know, come to fruition, right? I mean, I guess my story of the darling of the camp was Philip Lindsay, you know, seeing him. He beat me on a go route one time, and I was like, oh, yeah, this guy's going to be pretty decent. And he was, you know. Still don't know why the Broncos decided to let him go, but at the end of the day, Philip, you know, was my guy that I saw that was undrafted, and that was like, oh, he deserves this shot. He deserves everything that's coming his way. He got it. So I hope, you know, Jalen, you know, continues to flourish in this offense, man. Hopefully that, you know, Russell is his way a little more.
Yeah, it was awesome to see it. But of course, the reason he was out there, Brandon, is because there's been so many injuries. I mean, 3 of the top 4 receivers are out yesterday with KJ Hamler. Jerry Jeudy goes down. Tim Patrick's out. You got Javonte Williams out all, you know, for a few weeks now. Then you go to that offensive line. I mean, we're playing with a third-string center, backup tackles. So at one point, I know it's a really thin line between making excuses and the reality of the situation. Are injuries a factor, I mean, for the Broncos at this point? Where do you draw the line there?
Injuries are 100% a factor. Yeah, you know, and then look, we've been calling for Nathaniel Hackett's head, okay? You know what I'm saying, most of the season. But the reality is, right, a lot of his top targets, his top weapons, you know, his best players are out, you know. His starting left tackle's out. You know, like you said, playing with a third-string center. You know, Russ was sacked 6 times yesterday, right? You know, he has a practice squad receiver he's throwing to. Now, he did have a 66-yard touchdown, but at the end of the day, you know, our bell cow back is out. You know, so it's tough. It's tough. So, but this is what coaches get paid to do, right? This is what they get paid to do. At the end of the day, they get paid to make adjustments and the scheme to what we have. So, he's getting paid, right? And coaches, salaries are guaranteed, right? So he has no sympathy for me. I'm gonna be honest with you. All right, he has no. If our contract is guaranteed, all right, it'd be different. But at the end of the day, he's paid to make these adjustments. He's paid to figure it out, right? The GM is paid to to get the personnel in and have good depth. So look, yes, we're calling for his head. Yes, it is. Look, it is tough because we do have a lot of people out, but at the same time, it's a black and white league. You're gonna get it done or you're not.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't think there's anything to add to that. That was so perfect. I think that's really, truly how a lot of people feel. On that note, let's take a quick break. I'm going to let that soak in because, man, you hit that. You hit that so perfectly, B. Marsh. We got a lot more coming up here on Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. We're going to go around the league. Some crazy things happened on Sunday. Plus, we're going to do a little fantasy draft for this upcoming Monday night game. We'll be right back.
Travel consideration is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store.
Welcome back into Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. It's time right now to zoom around the league. We got a lot to talk about. Zoom Around the League brought to you by Zoom Care. Visit zoomcare.com to learn more about their Beyond Better urgent and primary healthcare clinics in Denver and Boulder. And of course, I feel like the game of the day, B. Marsh, was Vikings and Bills. I mean, so much to digest from this. Are the Vikings for real? Are they Super Bowl contenders? I mean, what was your take on that game?
Man, they look serious. The Vikings look serious, okay? At the end of the day, I think they were definitely a very much slept on 7-1 team. Now they're 8-1. They have, if not one of the best receivers in the game, right? And Justin Jefferson. That matchup had two of the top receivers. Stephon Diggs, he did his thing. Justin Jefferson did his thing. Kirk Cousins, he gets slided a lot, but he said, do you like that? Right? That's his slogan. So look, the Vikings look really good. They have a really good coach. Man, he came from the Rams, and look, he's turned that team around. So that was a great game, man. One of the most entertaining games I've seen in a while.
It's interesting because you talk about the Vikings coach, and everyone's like, all these other teams got first-year head coaches that are working out. You got Mike McDaniel in Miami. You got him up in Minnesota. And then it's like, what's going on with Hackett? Why do you think he has brought out, seems like, the best in Kirk Cousins, the Kirk Cousins that other coaches couldn't get to?
Yeah, I mean, it could potentially be, the scheme, the philosophy, how he, decided to coach him, how he decided to, work on his game, his reads, whatever offense he implemented, right? I think that is, clearly what's done it. Actually, it's funny because I was talking to my group chat and I posed the question, would you rather have Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins, right? A lot of people say Derek Carr, but when you look at the numbers, when you look at Kirk Cousins' numbers, if you just Google Kirk Cousins' stats, I mean, he's been playing great the last few years, right? His numbers are really good. So I don't know why he gets all the hate. People say, oh, he's a waste of money. No, Kirk Cousins really puts up the numbers. So, but I think he just elevated his game, and now the team is elevated on this year.
I mean, it's been wild. I got to agree. I was kind of sleeping on the Vikings. Now I feel like I really can't anymore. You mentioned Derek Carr. We got to go to that game. Colts, Raiders. There's so many elements to this game. Let's start with Derek Carr because you mentioned him. And you mentioned it earlier, post-game, and he's crying on the podium. Guys are posting on their social media. I know Broncos fans are happy that at least things are going wrong over at the Raiders, but seriously, what is your take when you see Derek Carr, a guy who's eternally positive, I mean, a guy you played with, when you see him break down like that?
Yeah, I mean, look, DC is a serial positive individual, right? No matter what's going on, he's always glass half full. He's always, on the up and up. He's optimistic, right? He's very positive. So to see him break down and cry on the podium like that, he's extremely frustrated. He's really frustrated. It's almost looks like it's beyond repair. And to me, when we talk about losing the locker room, right, when your players are crying on the podium and tweeting things, apologizing to the fan base, and it's not looking good for Josh McDaniels, at the end of the day. Now, will he get fired? No, I don't see that. They hired the Patriots GM, Dave Ziegler, right? So I don't see how that is going to, how they're going to part ways, at least his first year. But, it seems like, they've lost all hope, right? They lost to a first game, interim coach that just came off the couch, right? How did they lose that game? At home, right at home. So they're like, yo, who are we? What kind of team are we? We are, subpar at best, and at the end of the day, I just think he's really frustrated, man. And that's just how it looked. And it was actually kind of sad to see him cry.
It was kind of sad. Like, as much as I know Broncos fans don't want to see the Raiders succeed, it was sad. And it was sad, too, because, Broncos fans know, that is what Josh McDaniels does to people. That's what, and you talk to any guy who played for the Broncos during Josh McDaniels, and they'll tell you the same thing. Everything was all about how much you stink as a player, as a person, right? And it's to see that happen to Derek Carr, it's sad, man. Even if you don't like the Raiders, he's such a likable guy. It's just it's kind of sad to see.
Derek Carr is likable. He's a man of God. He's a man of faith, right? All he talks about is his faith, and he's positive, guys. We're going to go out there and all day, every day, no matter if they're going to losing streak or whatever. But this time, something was different about him, He broke down, Did Josh McDaniels break him down? I don't know what's going on in that locker room, Actually, I'm really down the street from the facility. Maybe I should go check them out, but I don't know what's going on. It's not like that they're, I don't see how they can turn the ship around or right these wrongs this year at least. So I don't know. It's bad though.
Well, maybe you should go in there and see if they're looking for a head coach. Because look, that seems like that's what happened over at the Colts. Jeff Saturday making his coaching debut. A lot of coaches, a lot of people in the NFL really mad about this. I mean, Bill Cowher, he had some words. Let's play what he had to say on the pregame show.
For an owner to hire a coach who's never been an assistant at the college level or the pro level, and overseeing a lot of candidates that are qualified for that job, as we see in Steve Wilks, an opportunity to build a resume. It's a disgrace to the coaching profession. And regardless how this thing plays out, what happened in Indianapolis is a travesty.
So, I mean, he's absolutely livid. Those are really strong words. Doesn't even care how this pans out. Kind of saying it's an indictment on the coaching, on how much coaches have had to get there. I mean, do you agree with that? What was your take on Jim Irsay hiring Jeff Saturday?
No, I 100% agree with Bill Cowher at the end of the day because, he was a former coach, right? So he understood what it took to climb that ladder. Mm-hmm. He understood the hours, the years that it took to get to where he got as a great coach, right? And so for Jim Irsay to pass up all these great candidates, all these guys who have tons of experience coaching, tons of experience in the league, for somebody who's just coaching high school football, I don't care if he was made the Pro Bowl and won a Super Bowl or not. I don't care about any of that, right? At the end of the day, they called him off the couch after coaching high school football. I coach high school football right now, okay? There's no way, I think me or my head coach is qualified to just start to go and coach the Las Vegas Raiders. Maybe we would do just as good as Josh McDaniels doing, but at the end of the day, I think it's a slap in the face to all the guys who have been working their tails off, been grinding year in and year out, starting in college, then, as a GA, then worked their way up, and they get passed over for somebody who, frankly, he's a broadcaster. He had the name, but at the end of the day, he doesn't have the experience.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting to see how this pans out. But honestly, you did coach high school. I think you got to walk over to the Raiders facility. The door has been opened at least by Jim.
At this point, sure.
You would definitely be an upgrade over Josh McDaniels. That I know for sure. So, speaking of head coach B. Marsh, let's draft some fantasy teams. It's time for the Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy, it's the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. So it's time to pick some players for tonight's interesting matchup. You got Philly, they're fantastic. You got Washington, NFC East though, kind of rocking this year. So B. Marsh, you are kicking Michael's butt. He told me I could give him a little crap for how bad he's doing as well. But now I feel the pressure to at least try and compete. But since you almost doubled down on him yesterday, or last week, 2 weeks ago. So that means you get to start. You got to go first.
Well, that's cool. I think I want to say I'm 0-3. I've won, maybe 4 out of the next 5. So, I'm feeling good about myself. I made a coaching change, not a high school coach,
okay.
But, at the end of the day, we had to, get somebody up here who knew what they were doing. So with the first pick, I'm going to go A.J. Brown.
I love it. Coach B. Marsh. Watch out, Josh McDaniels. I'm telling you. All right, I'm gonna take Dallas Goedert, and then this is snake style, and then Devonta Smith.
Nice. I'm gonna go with Miles Sanders, and then I'm going with Antonio Gibson next.
Okay, I like it. All right. I'm gonna take Terry McLaurin, and then Brian Robinson. We keep forgetting he's starting.
Yeah, I definitely forgot. I picked Antonio, not even thinking that Brian was the starter, but it's okay. Hopefully my guys will make up for it. And my last pick, I actually picked this guy up on my actual fantasy because I saw that they run the ball with him. He's more of a gadget guy, but he's been scoring some pretty good points. I'm gonna go with Curtis Samuel.
I love it. I feel pretty good about this. The good news is Michael did so bad last time that if I do bad, I feel like it's okay. Right. It's okay. And Coach B. Marsh is just crushing it. B. Marsh, this has been such a blast. Thanks for sticking with me as I fill in for Michael. I hope you'll come back next week.
Absolutely. I'll be there in person.
He'll be back. All right. I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. That was Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Have a great Monday. We'll see you next week.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store.